I'm Philip. My day job as a 9 to 5 is an analyst at a consulting company called Elixirr based in London. Outside of that, I'm heavily involved in the non-profit space. So I'm currently a director within the organisation CSRN, who I'm joining you today from. And I oversee our partnerships and network. It's an organisation I've been involved in for around 2 years now as well, and have helped kind of set up and scale since then, along with a number of co-founders who I'll mention in today's session. Aside from that, I've also recently joined Action for Refugee Life as an advisory board member as well, who are based in the Kakuma camp in Kenya. And I'm also a Northern Ireland delegate for the One Young World program as well. So a bit of a range of experience across the non-profit sector, but have all kept me very on my toes and very busy as well. If we want to look at the objectives for today's session, first we want to understand the current landscape of youth engagement and social impact. So where are we today? We also want to look at the trends and incentives influencing youth towards social impacts. So what is driving that kind of further engagement? I want to do a bit of a spotlight on who CSRN are and how we as youth, as an entirely youth-led organisation, have engaged with global nonprofits as well. And then have a bit of audience engagement. So hopefully you'll be able to take to the chat and answer some of the questions that I want to pose to you. I'm hoping some of our participants are involved in nonprofits, are leaders of nonprofits, or interested in that space as well. So it would be great to hear some answers from you that we can really push as outcomes of this session. So we'll jump right in with our first part. So the state of the nation, where are we today? In terms of the problem that we're consistently trying to solve, it's about bringing youth and social impact organisations together, both of which are kind of in need of support and can gain mutual benefit. So we have thousands and thousands of talented young people who look to get meaningful and purposeful professional experience as well. We also have charitable organisations who are looking for additional resources and support to help them advance their social impact. By bringing these two parties together, we can make impactful work experience, a career with a purpose, and make youth more confident and employable and give them a broader range of experience. We can also use their talents to make a real difference to the world around them. And for the charities, they get access to high quality and innovative support and enthusiastic resources as well. And they can really try and focus on what they do best, which is making a difference and influencing the next generation. In terms of what youth engagement can look like, there's quite a number of options as well, which I've outlined on the slides. So we have youth as volunteers as kind of a starting basis. We often see it as a part-time basis. It's something you can do through your school, through work, through just kind of your own kind of initiative and outreach as well. It's normally with larger organisations as well. So I know in the UK with the likes of Oxfam or like Dogs Trust and a number of other large Age UK. As well, there's lots of volunteering opportunities with them for young people, and it's more of a tendency towards kind of physical activities or fundraising. So I know there's things like hedge planting. I've previously done things with boxing, kind of food parcels for the homeless as well, or else fundraising activities as well for the likes of like Meningitis UK as well. So even I've been involved in the kind of physical activities as well, and they are very valuable and very convenient, and it's great programs that non-profit organizations can kind of scale up on outreach and partner with the likes of schools or workplaces for as well. So they're very accessible for youth, which is one of the many advantages of volunteer programs too. We then build that up to kind of youth-led programs. So these are programs normally within large organizations that are run by youth and aimed at youth as well. They can be kind of part-time basis or else full-time, especially within the larger organizations, and often have the support of additional resources and funding within the organization to make sure that the program is a success and that the youth is well supported, and is slightly more of a risk-averse approach to youth leadership within non-profits, which is what makes it so valuable as well. We then want to build it up again to youth as founders. So this is becoming increasingly common, and it's often on a full-time basis as well, where young people are taking the initiative to spot opportunity gaps within different sectors, within different regions, among different areas of the population as well, and taking the initiative to start their own organizations. So these, again, are normally smaller organizations with their kind of regional focuses or very kind of niche target audiences as well. they'll work off generally low cost models and scale quite slowly, is what the typical trends indicate towards, as funding is always such a challenge for kind of non-profits to get access to, especially at such a junior level as well. And a lot of these kind of grants and things we've seen come from trust. And you'll find with some of the maybe older kind of public bodies and things like that, getting trust for youth-led non-profits is definitely a challenge. And there's a level of bias involved as well. But again, it's very, very rewarding. It's becoming increasingly popular and increasingly successful. And we'll kind of talk about through that in today's session as well. And then finally, we have youth as board members. So this is very much on a part-time basis. Can be both large and small organizations. And the best thing about it is there's a greater consideration for youth's needs in both the strategy and services. So I will give an example after, but having a youth member on your board of your advisory board or your board of directors, whatever it may be, is great for kind of more inclusivity, more of a bottom-up approach, more consideration for youth, especially if you run any form of youth program, any sort of schools program, any education, anything like that. If it's associated with youth and youth engagement, having that voice at the top level is extremely important as well for how you make the right kind of services and products and support for that audience as well. So it's great to have such a range of engagement possibilities for youth and non-profit. So I want to talk a bit about where youth engagement is happening. Essentially, the message is that it's global. There is youth initiatives happening across the globe when coming to the forefront every day as well. And it's very inspiring to see a lot of more media coverage and more news stories of these and how youth are really making a difference in their communities and also at a global scale. And this can be across a range of options. So it's working in the nonprofit sector, it's corporate social responsibility, it's working in the public sector as well with government organizations. So yeah, a few examples on this. So in the US, we have the likes of Organized Communities Against Deportation, which is very much an undocumented and youth-led group whose mission is to organize against the deportation, detention, criminalization, and incarceration of immigrant communities within the US. It's a very potent topic within the US. It's one a lot of youth feel very strongly against, as well as the kind of deportation. So yeah, taking the initiative to set that up, and they focused on empowering those affected by deportation and oppression as well, and running a vast array of kind of programs. There are quite a few actually youth-led as well against things like child deportation, because they've experienced it, they've been through it, and now they want to stop it as well. So it's incredibly inspiring to see things like that and that's against a government body. Essentially, that's against ICE as well. So it's youth standing against, institutional injustice as well. If we then look towards the UK, we see it come to more of the corporate side. So Justin Farrance is always a great example. He is now kind of a world-leading youth LGBT advocate who's used his work through CSR and a legal company called Allen & Overy to establish his own mentoring organization for socially underprivileged youths, as well as a lot of one-to-one mentoring opportunities and kind of learning and accessibility issues. And he's spoken at a range of conferences around the world, not only on inclusivity and social inclusion, but also on LGBT rights as well, and has been a great youth advocate for that. If we then go down to Africa, we've seen a lot more youth-related organisations set up to tackle the ongoing climate crisis and natural disasters. I think for anyone that kind of tries to keep up to date or keep aware, natural disasters are becoming increasingly common and increasingly more impactful in a lot of the Northern African regions as well, and maybe doesn't get the coverage that it deserves. So a lot of the youth have taken it into their own hands to start tackling this crisis. So we've saw Desmond Alugna and the Green Africa Youth Organization set up as a great example of this, with multiple programs established to not only build awareness, understanding, and prevention, but also establish things like circular economy initiatives, build sustainable development reports into large government organizations, run physical kind of natural disaster prevention activities among various regions. But we've also now seen Desmond become, a youth leader, again, at a number of conferences and at universities and things like that on how we tackle the climate crisis. And he's been through it and he's experienced it as well, which is incredible to see. Other examples that we had on this was the likes of Afghanistan and the Middle East, which have seen a massive spike in youth-led initiatives to tackle inequality and indifference to create a more progressive society. And even Australia as well, which has actually created some of the leading ocean preservation organisations to maintain the likes of barrier reefs and life forms. And if you look through quite a number of those organisations, a majority of them are towards the youth-led side now as well, which is kind of incredible to see that that purpose is driven on a societal basis as well. So it's very clear that innovation is springing up across the globe, and youth are able to lead the charge across a vast number of areas and sectors and for a vast number of causes as well, which is incredibly inspiring to see. So who is this network support? How does this network support it? Sorry. So global communities are being set up to connect and support young people in their social impact missions as well. So I have three kind of probably the largest examples of this in today's society. So we have the United Nations Youth Participation Program. So hold on. There we go. The United Nations system. So they have a UN youth program, which is aimed to build awareness of the global situation of young people, as well as promote their rights and their aspirations. The focal point always works towards greater participation of young people in decision making as a means of achieving peace and development. So they've done that through enhancing awareness of the global situations of youth, increased recognition of rights and right disparity, as I kind of talked about in the likes of the Middle East, promoting national youth policies, coordinating mechanisms and youth programs. So again, pushing it into the public body, making it a governmental challenge to create that equality and create those opportunities, and then strengthen the participation of youth in decision-making processes at all levels. So similar to what I talked about of youth in boards and youth-led founders, as well as increased participation is what we want to kind of promote and enhance as well. On the other hand, we then also have One Young World, which I'm very fortunate to be a part of. So One Young World will hold their annual summit in a country of their choosing, where countries from around the world will select a number of delegates that they want to promote to attend the summit. And then you will spend 3 days going through workshops, through speaker series, through networking events, through workshops and collaboration opportunities as well to build your nonprofit network around the globe, to learn from others and see what they've done, to hear from experienced leaders and learn from their experience and their journeys. And then once you attend the summit, you become a One Young World ambassador, and that stays with you for life. Essentially, you are then now part of that network and can still engage, can still attend events. I'm currently on the acceleration program through One Young World as well. So again, it's a really valuable community that is about providing connection and resources as well to young people. And then the last one is the World Economic Forum Global Shapers Community, which is a network of inspiring young people, all under the age of 30, who work together to address local, regional, and global challenges. So Global Shapers will have different communities in different countries. So I know there's a Global Shapers in India. I know there's one based in London, Canada, the US as well. So they will work very independently, but also together to solve a wide variety of challenges. I think they currently have something like more than 14,000 members across something like over 450 cities as well. So it's quite crazy to think about the scale of these organizations now and the influence they're continuing to have. And ultimately across the three, they're a way of enhancing and promoting youth voices as well. They give youth a platform to demonstrate the impact and the value that we're creating through non-profit work and social enterprises and just social impact in general as well, which is really good for kind of building that trust and transparency in youth to be able to go in and make this difference as well. So that's why communities like these are so valuable. And again, a platform like today where it's the Rise Summit and Rise Infinity in general, I know from working with, being able to come on and host this session again will hopefully help iterate that as well. So it's really great to see. If we want to look at some of the trends and incentives that are influencing this kind of let's say move of young people into social impact, we can look at a couple of trends. So the first will not likely be a surprise to anyone, and I've just put on the definitions here to make sure we highlight the key differences between what some of these terms actually mean. They're becoming increasingly common in today's language. I'm sure a lot of us refer to them almost as buzzwords now, but we have sustainability, CSR, corporate social responsibility, and ESG, environmental, social, and governance as well. So these are three trends that we're really seeing coming to the forefront, and that is in how corporate organizations must begin to work. This is how nonprofits need to continue working. This is around careers for people as well going forward, what we as a society needs to move towards. So it's very much all encompassing as well. So when we talk about sustainability, um, that is the developments that we need to do now without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it does commonly get banded in with kind of environmental discussions, but sustainability is how we can do things practically today without damaging the future as well. So more sustainable jobs, more sustainable organizations. It's a word that is drilled into everything we do. It's where so much research and investment goes from like technology and sciences as well. So it's why a lot of our careers of the future are going to be based around sustainability and how we can maintain that as well. I think the Chief Sustainability Officer is a great example of a new career pathway that people can follow that's based around that kind of term specifically too. Corporate social responsibility is a really interesting one because it gives us the opportunity to have a professional career, potentially outside the nonprofit space, but also still engage in social impact through these larger organizations as well. So I can know it from my previous experience in PwC or even now at Elixirr, we have charities and foundations set up as part of these organizations that we can go away and engage in. So in PwC, we did a lot of like homeless events and fundraising and awareness events and donations. In Elixirr, we go out and do educational programs for schools in London as well, and we run fundraising events. So they're becoming increasingly common. I'd almost say it's an expectation now for most corporate organizations to have a CSR function or else a CSR kind of strategy as well built into their organization. I think I want to see the future of CSR move more towards, yeah, as we kind of said on this, how we can create policies, how we can influence public organizations, how we can influence customers in an organization as well to be more responsible and think more ethically as well, how we can create community activities about in the kind of regions where we work as well, and then also more philanthropic endeavors. So obviously moving away from individual donations to large corporate sponsors, I know is definitely a recommendation we've given to many charities through CSRN as well. And then it's also encouraging more kind of transparent reporting and sustainability disclosures as well from organizations. So again, it's another one of those kind of buzzword terms that we've seen, but it's incredibly valuable and the pressure is increasing on these organizations. And it's all coming through regulatory change as well, which is really important to remember because regulatory change mandates the engagement with CSR practices and sustainability practices. It makes it a reality. If you come in and you have understanding of these areas, then you're probably immediately a lot more employable to the organizations that need to make these changes as well. And the final one, which I'm sure everyone's heard many times, is ESG. So not to be confused with sustainability, but it does cover environmental, but also social and governance as well. So it's commonly used by investors and investment managers, and the ESG portfolio is one that is seen as a lot more risk adverse now, as well, a lot more long term and suitable. It mitigates a lot of sustainability risks. It enhances the performance of a company or even an investment portfolio as well. So we see a lot of sustainable finance tied to the term ESG. We see a lot of new regulation tied to the term ESG as well. And this concept has been used in marketing, in the creation of new products and services, kind of branding, the setup of like a lot of ESG consultancies, as well, and ESG investment funds. So again, it's becoming very clear that you don't have to sacrifice a successful career, especially if you want to maintain to that corporate side. Maybe if you don't have as much interest in the nonprofit space, but you can still engage in things like ESG, CSR, and sustainability, and kind of have that career with a purpose, I think is the main message out of a lot of these terms. And it's becoming more common in the education system as well. So a lot more youth are becoming familiar with these terms from a very young age as well. So yeah, three really, really important concepts that became the kind of new buzzwords of the day. We also have then what influences this, and it's also then the demand from nonprofits for more youth skills. And this ultimately comes down to, I think, technology as a great example of this. So when we look at youth, and this is mainly being based around UK statistics, over 80% possess above average digital skills. Engagement with recruitment for technology roles has increased 42% post-COVID. So with these additional skills, there is more engagement with recruitment. There's more of a desire to have a career in technology as well. Participation in STEM subjects has increased by 50% since 2012 as of this year. So that's more interest in the technology and the economics and the engineering as well. So those technical subjects and the science-based subjects too. And then, yes, technology development and design was also documented as one of the leading career interests, with 37% of students in the UK prioritising it as their leading career. So it's really interesting to see that, yeah, as we become more familiar with tech, we are a generation that are now brought up on technology. We're incredibly familiar with it. The ability to upskill quickly in it and keep up with new developments in the marketplace and new innovations as well is extremely valuable skill sets for youth to kind of have and engage with. On the other side, we then have nonprofits who require more and more technology capabilities within their organization to meet modern day needs. But it's also on the other side that technology can be costly, it can create a lot of additional overhead and requires a lot more resources to run successfully. And it can be challenging, technical, and difficult if implementing or managing incorrectly. So I know a great example of this is setting up, say, a reporting and financial platform, something we previously engaged with, and they did a 3-week training course for us on how we could get access and get it set up for our organization. But then it was handed over to us to start running ourselves, and it quickly became obvious that we didn't have that capability or understanding of what was quite a complex technology platform to use it successfully. So we did have to go back and kind of ask for additional support and see what was possible. And this was all done on a kind of donation basis by the organization as well. So it was kind of a bit of a back and forth of, can we have these free resources? Yes, but only for so long. And this is quite common through a lot of tech platforms, especially when they have kind of non-profit programs where you can get access to a free trial version or a limited version, or just have free access to the platform. As well, you still need those resources to actually set up and run the technology. But it is becoming increasingly important for scaling organizations. Impact reporting is a huge one at the minute, especially aligned to the SDGs and how we can go for things like fundraising campaigns and grant applications as well, and also for engaging donors. So we've seen more online crowdfunding campaigns being set up, more importance on the website, on your social media, how you then tie that into your systems, what's the most efficient kind of donor process that you can set up using technology as well. So it's becoming critical that nonprofits have these skills. And I mean, through CSRN, we sit down with organizations and we chat through their challenges and their issues, as well as their opportunities. And we see technology come up almost every call. We're even seeing data science come up now. So this is the use of AI and automation as well. So these are advanced technologies and coding as well that we need, that these organizations need support from as well. So seeing that demand and then seeing that as a rewarding career in a nonprofit will definitely influence youth to engage more and see that as their avenue to apply the technology skills, but in a purposeful way as well. So speaking of CSRN, I want to do a bit of a spotlight on CSRN and how we, as a completely youth-led organisation, have been able to engage with global nonprofits around the world, and how us that have been engaged in CSRN for a while have kind of found the value of working in the nonprofit space. So I want to talk about what CSRN is. We were set up in March 2020 by Jack, who you can see on the screen, as well as two of his friends. And this was to engage. We all kind of came from a student consulting background during our university studies, which meant that we did free consulting for small organizations, sometimes charities as well, to just kind of build our own experience. So Jack came from that. We noticed a bit of a gap where student consulting wasn't engaging in kind of crisis support and crisis response. So we started out with the COVID pandemic in the UK and how we could help organizations go from physical services to online, how they could go to more online marketing and online donations during such a time of great difficulty and such limitations as well due to the lockdown. We quickly realized that this model worked really well virtually, and as we'll kind of go through our cycles, we expanded globally. We expanded our university network globally, and we've just been able to build and build on that since then. So along the top, you can see we've now worked with over 500 charities across the globe. That means we've engaged with about 4,500 individual students on our university branch teams. And we've got over 60 universities involved from around the globe, and we'll kind of give more details on those statistics in a couple of other slides. Of course, yeah, setting this up coming out as we were all in university meant that a lot of us didn't have a lot of professional experience to go on. Some of us had placements and internships as well. And this is why we were really fortunate to have the support of other corporate organizations. So you can see Atkins, Grace, Lancia there, other consultancies that give us mentorship, that give us steering guidance, give us material, ran training programs for our student network as well. They were able to come in and support us. And I think whenever it comes to youth-led organizations, a lot of youth should not take the kind of stance of it needs to be entirely youth-led. We know what we're doing, and we need to prove that we know what we're doing. Being able to take that support, being able to always admit that there's more to learn, learning from those who've kind of been through it and been through some of the mistakes and the challenges, learning from the professionals, how can we apply corporate and practices to the kind of non-profit space as well, all became really, really valuable for us and really critical. And one of the things we're really proud of at CSRN is that we offer everything pro bono. So all of us that you can see on the screen and all of us within CSRN as an organization do this on an entirely voluntary basis, mostly around our kind of day jobs and our studies as well, but still making time for that because it's become a cause that we really care about as well. In terms of the types of projects we work on, and I'm hopeful that maybe there's a few non-profit leaders on the call at the minute or that will watch the session and see this because we're always looking for new charities to support. What we've been able to do is come up with the consulting practices that we can provide to non-profits through our student consulting network. So a lot of it is based around strategy. So I'd say some of the key ones we see come up are the fundraising, the partnership strategy, marketing and expansion, as well as implementation strategy. And we're seeing kind of more project management practices come up as well to help standardize and scale organizations. So these are all kind of, yeah, really important areas, but we've wanted to branch out into kind of the more the data science and the creative consulting capabilities. So this is bringing students' technical skills into play. And we've seen in the data science, as I said, impact measurement becoming increasingly common. How do we track impact measurement for certain kind of campaigns or programs? And how do we communicate that impact back to donors so that they know where their money and their value has went as well? But we've also seen things like interactive dashboards, analytics and visualization, AI, process optimization, automation. How can you, a lot of charities are set up on Microsoft Teams. How can you better use Teams and all the functionalities built within it to run your organization successfully? And then we have the creative consulting side. So especially relevant for the kind of grassroots organizations. How can I set up a very impactful brand? Do you need graphic and product design skills for that? Potentially, yes. Do you need to design a certain volunteering or fundraising campaign? And, you know, is there any supporting animations and infographics that go with that? So we've sketched land for all the universities, we've found where these students are and who have these skills and who want to give up some of their time to work for these charitable organizations as well and provide those services. So yeah, we're really fortunate to kind of offer such a wide expanse to our network, but it really does show the value and the range of work that students can kind of provide and young people can provide to non-profit organizations. In terms of what we've achieved so far, so we've run 6 global responses and 10 project rounds since our kind of conception, which has brought us up to kind of supporting over 500 charities. So we aim to do at least 50 charities per cycle, and we run 3 cycles per year which aligns very well with the kind of student semesters as well. So we kind of know our youth audience and when they'll be most likely to engage. And we work to kind of a flexible model that suits their availability, but also kind of works to the charity's timescales as well. As I mentioned, we started out in the UK as the COVID-19 Student Response Network, which is what CSRN originally stood for. We realised it all worked well. We were in lockdown, so we were able to kind of match students across the UK with UK organisations in other regions. And we realised that they didn't actually have to be together in the room to create shared value. Shortly after this, the Beirut blast happened. We were able to set up a team of students on the ground in Lebanon who could go out and identify and communicate to Lebanese organisations who needed our support in the recovery of that disaster. They then put us in contact with that. And one thing we learned from that was that having students on the ground and that global student network was really valuable for building trust quite quickly with these non-profit organisations. And it was definitely a hurdle that we had to kind of tackle in our early days of some kind of misunderstandings around what we could, the services we could actually provide, some hesitancies around kind of having youth work on some of these challenges and these developments and these strategies as well. And then over time, because of the work that we've done, we've been able to build up such a bank of experience that we can now talk quite confidently and we can stand on the CSRN name. But definitely in the early days and the early cycles, it was a massive challenge for us all. We've continued to expand that in community development work in Africa. We set up a First Steps program, which got school kids engaged in social impact consulting as well. And this is what I'm on the point of it's becoming more common in education to see purpose built in. I know the career services and schools are starting to think about these things, and that's who we engaged with to set up the program as well. And then we also did our India response. So this was around the second wave of COVID, and it was the same for Malaysia and Indonesia. And we've maintained presence in those regions on other community development programs. We're now on our climate response, so working with any organization globally that is tackling the climate crisis. We're exploring what's going to be next. So obviously the Pakistan floods, the natural disasters in Africa, the Ukraine war are all examples of where we want to kind of focus some of our initiatives next as well. So yeah, it's a great expansive work. It's a global program, but it does show that youth can work anywhere and support nonprofits around the globe, especially on a virtual basis. So you actually don't need them in the office and on the ground with you as well, which makes it a lot more accessible and a lot more kind of easy for you as nonprofit leaders to kind of manage. So in terms of who we've worked with in the past, and this is very much around kind of showing that youth can work across any scale of an organization. So the local to grassroots, the national and the global organizations. I know from local and grassroots that I did a project for a Lebanese wildlife nonprofit around building them a rehabilitation center and what all the requirements were that we needed for that, what was the fundraising we needed to do, what would then the supply to this center be as well. And that was about 2 years ago, and it was great because we got involved in I met the entire team that worked for that organization as a grassroots organization. I got to witness animal rescues live on video calls. I think a story I will always tell was witnessing a baby alligator in a bathtub, which was rescued from animal traders, which was definitely not what I expected to see on a Thursday night video call. But yeah, so seeing their work kind of face to face and getting involved in grassroots was really, really rewarding. It was a project I really enjoyed, and it's kind of what inspired me to go into kind of CSRN and continue that journey. But you can also see it scales all the way up to global. So we've worked with the likes of the UN Global Compact Network, with Habitat for Humanity in India, with Make-A-Wish, Red Dot Foundation. There's so many, and we tend to work more within certain functions of these organizations, but it also does show that there is still value for youth engagement and youth consideration within these large organizations who we all see as very set up and very established and kind of working at scale and experience. But it's still important to have a youth-led element within them, especially if their work relates in any way to kind of youth. We also had 2 quotes on this, and there was one that I think was very suitable from Paula from Gestures from the Heart of And suddenly came a beautiful team of young, dynamic, and extremely motivated people. They were like a ray of hope that came at the right time. So this is when I refer to often to youth as very enthusiastic resources. I think it's a general, probably a trend that youth come in with a lot of enthusiasm. We get to hear the stories from those who have founded nonprofits, and it's very inspiring, and we become very appreciative as well. And I know a lot of us, and a lot of the work that we've seen from teams at CSRN is very much about going above and beyond expectations to deliver and to deliver value for the organizations as well. So to hear that from nonprofit leaders really backs the work that we do, kind of gives us a very nice reminder as well of why do we do this as well, and gives us the motivation to continue it. And this is kind of why, in CSRM, we look at how can we potentially make a career out of something like this as well for ourselves, and how can we inspire others to do the same. As I mentioned, I think one of the advantages of youth is also our kind of network. So university networks was something that we tapped into and have found nothing but value from. We've been able to work with 60 universities, over 69 globally, with kind of hubs in the UK, in India, in America, in Australia, being able to engage with these branches where necessary, finding branches that are on the ground with the charities is now something that we can offer. And it again adds value, it adds to the experience that these youth get, but it also means that we can allocate teams from different regions, from regions that a charity maybe wants to expand into, and an area of interest, they want a different perspective on their organization as well. So yeah, it's really benefited us having this kind of global university network to kind of add to, and it means that we've got to meet global students as well and build our own networks and build and it'll be really interesting to see where these people kind of go in the future, and will they go into the non-profit space as well and build our non-profit network. And I know quite a lot of students were invited to join the kind of Rise Summit as well, so it was great to see the need and the desire for youth participation in these kind of events as well. So that kind of brings me to kind of end of what CSRN is and what we've kind of set up. As I said, CSRN's been entirely youth led from day one. We have had an advisory board with more senior people in to help guide us when we were kind of a very young and junior organization, but we've now been able to bring it on ourselves to scale it and continue developing the services that we can deliver as well. And it's also great because we all see each other very frequently. We're all very good friends. It's part of the fun of a youth kind of based organization as well, is the enjoyment that we get from also working as part of it too. So yeah, hopefully you kind of enjoyed hearing about CSRN a bit. On the kind of final section, and this is where I'm hoping people can kind of take to the chat, is we have a number of questions of what do we kind of want to explore today. And this is where we want to hear from nonprofits or people in that space or people from public bodies around some of the key questions for youth engagement in nonprofits. So just to read them out, I would really appreciate some answers in the chat that we can discuss. Is how can youth spot opportunities or gaps to create social impact and start nonprofits? Is there proactive ways that we can go out into our communities to do that? How can youth approach volunteering opportunities and sell themselves? If you had a youth coming that wanted to do volunteering experience for your organization, what would you want to kind of hear from them? How would they sell themselves to you as well? What challenges will youth continue to face in kind of moving into the social impact nonprofit sector? And is there any advice for how we overcome these? Can youth make a career in social enterprise and nonprofits? Do we think this is a possibility in the future? Is this going to become more common? And what resources are available to support the move into nonprofit work, whether it's educational resources, job boards, anything like that that people are aware of as well, and being able to take the findings from these questions and share it back with our student network as well will hopefully only encourage them to get more involved in the non-profit social impact space as well. So yeah, I'd really appreciate it if people were able to kind of take to the chat box and provide some of their insights and thoughts on this, and hopefully learn from some of the attendees of the summit as well. So yeah, hopefully give you a few minutes now to type out some answers. I'd be very interested to hear any answers towards the making a career in social enterprise, kind of non-profits. I think I've seen a lot. I know a few other kind of young people who have founded or started their own organizations, but it's very much on a part-time basis um, as well. So it's how you can actually make that into a full career and a rewarding career, I think, as well, with progression opportunities is definitely one of the challenges, I think. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. And then, yes, thank you, Aparna, as well. I can see in the chat any resources that people have as well would be amazing to have shared with us too, because I can see we have some great attendees on the call as well, and some co-founders and founders and partnership officers and much more. So it'd be great to hear from you guys too. And even if, yeah, we can't come up with anything on the session as well, I'll happily drop my email in the chat if anyone wants to drop any communications or answers or resources after the session too, or else is interested in exploring kind of opportunities with CSRN as well. As I said, we're always looking for new nonprofits to kind of support and work with. We have an upcoming project cycle at the minute as well, and we'd love to kind of chat about any challenges or issues that you may face as an organization, or any opportunities you see as well that students can come in and help with to kind of build your social impact as an organization too. So yes, also please do feel free to reach out after the session. Be more than happy to have a conversation. But yeah, I'll give it a few more minutes and we can see if there's any answers. Otherwise, I think we can bring the session to a close. Oh yes, there's a great one in there about universities having career fairs. So through that platform, sharing the work done by CSRN, yeah, definitely. I think we often just engage with different student societies and very specific societies within the universities. But yeah, maybe I think careers fairs and sharing the volunteering opportunities to students through that careers fair could be valuable, and that's I think something a lot of nonprofits could actually do as well. I think it was from my time in university, we only had a careers page with all of our graduate jobs. I don't actually think I ever saw a voluntary kind of careers page, or voluntary space that highlighted these kind of work opportunities too. So it'd be really interesting to kind of explore that too. Thank you very much for that. Yes, highlighting the opportunities to parents and career counsellors as well. Yeah, I suppose again, starts at a very young age, the interest in some of these spaces. So to get into that audience would be massively beneficial too. Is there any challenges that people think youth will continue to face in moving into the social impact nonprofit space, or do we think that has kind of opened up and it's those challenges and those stigmas have kind of been reduced a lot as well? Perfect. Well, not sure. Hopefully not. I'll drop my email address into the chat as well for people on the call. If anyone kind of has any further additional answers to any of these kind of questions as well, I'd love to hear from you. As I said, if you're interested in CSRN, I'd love to kind of set up and have a call with you too. But yeah, would absolutely love to hear from you. But otherwise, I think we can bring today's session to a close. Hopefully you kind of find it insightful, hearing some of the rationale for youth. Hopefully it encourages you to engage more with youth in your non-profit organizations, or if your youth, encourages you to kind of look at social impact and non-profits as a career avenue as well. I think social enterprises are a great new form of making that happen as well. So hopefully there's better consideration from that. I also want to thank obviously the RISE team as well for having CSRN along for another year in the RISE Summit and being able to kind of engage and involve with the network. And yeah, huge thanks for everyone for making the time to attend today. But otherwise, I think we can bring the session to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.